American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, and Glaser Weil present the 2021 Pursuit of Justice Awards.
As a result of that at GS2 Law. I'm very fond of him. I hope you are too. Let me present to you the one, the only, the inestimable Stephen Greenwald.
It is my honor and great pleasure to congratulate my friend, Slim Jubran, on his receiving the Pursuit of Justice Award, an honor that he well deserves. Salim represents and embodies the best aspects of the rule of law and the equality of justice in Israel. The first Arab member of the High Court, his wisdom and life experiences drove him to focus on the issues of equality and human rights, and he stands out as a leader in both areas. His commitment to equality and the application of the law to all citizens of Israel, Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, is his legacy and sets a bar for the court to meet in future cases. Salim was and is a great friend of the American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists. He made numerous trips to the United States, where he spoke to groups of American Jews about the role of the High Court in Israel and the centrality of the rule of law and the independence of the High Court as pillars of Israeli democracy. In New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Washington, and other cities, he drew crowds eager to hear the views of a Maronite Christian on the state of democracy in Israel. His remarks always reflected his support for the state of Israel and his optimism about the state of democracy in Israel. Coming from a Christian citizen and High Court justice, those remarks carried a great weight with his audiences. He was one of the few foreign judges to be honored with a private lunch with members of the United States Supreme Court in recognition of his unique status. Congratulations to my friend and colleague, Slim Jubran.
Good afternoon, good evening to all those who are joining us, and a special Bruchim Habayim to Justice Jubran. Thank you for joining us, and Kol HaKavod to you for all that you have done. I'm especially grateful that you're receiving this award today. To be honest, before joining the Aajlj, I had not heard of Justice Jubran, but since joining the organization and serving on the board of the Aajlj, I've had the opportunity to learn how extraordinary of a jurist Justice Jubran is and the impact that he had in serving on Israel's High Court. One of the reasons that I chose to become a lawyer and to go to law school was to develop a skill set that would allow me to affect meaningful change. And I know many of my colleagues and friends have expressed similar sentiments about why they chose to become lawyers themselves. The late Justice Ginsburg would say, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Justice Jubran, whom I know Justice Ginsburg had the opportunity to meet and interact with, exemplifies this saying. He is a pioneer that has created the space and opportunity for others to follow him. In learning about Justice Jubran and looking beyond his accomplishment and his role as the first Israeli Arab to serve on Israel's High Court, I've come across a few examples that are particularly meaningful for me. For example, Justice Jubran's decision to stand for Hatikva, Israel's national anthem, but not recite its words, foreshadowed our country's reckoning with the meaning of our national anthem. Justice Jubran managed to convey his message and his reasons in a way that reflected his principles and his respect for Israel. In a way also that his message was heard and accepted by others, even those that did not necessarily agree with him. As we know and have seen in our country, in many different fora and venues, this is something that is exceedingly difficult to accomplish. Justice Jubran's last majority opinion before retiring was also emblematic of his approach. In his last opinion, he criticized Israel's law preventing same-sex couples from using surrogacy to parent children as discriminatory, while postponing a decision on the merits of the case to allow Israel's Knesset to pass legislation on the subject. As a lawyer with many years of practice, I hope, still ahead of me, I look to Justice Jubran as a role model for what we as a profession and I as a lawyer can accomplish and the way in which we go about doing that. Thank you.
I am very much honored being asked to congratulate my dear friend and my young brother on receiving the 2021 Annual Pursuit of Justice Award. My congratulations goes, of course, also to his dear wife, Nina, and to his children, from myself and from Elika. We know the whole family. I was the Chief Justice of Israel when Salim was appointed to the Israeli Supreme Court. Unlike in the United States, the judges of the Israeli Supreme Court, headed by the Chief Justice, have a role to play and are playing a formal role in the appointment of all this in Israel, including the judges of the Supreme Court. It was a great joy for us at the Supreme Court to have Salim as one of us. I remember very well receiving almost every month a call from our Prime Minister, Menachem Begin, begging me, please help me, help us to appoint an Arab to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, we made it, and we selected Salim. And we liked him at the Supreme Court as one of our brothers, and the country itself was in joy. Salim was a great judge and a dear brother. He served in the Israeli Supreme Court for 13 years. He served in the Israeli judiciary for 35 years. He started at the lowest rank and climbed up and up. And at the age of 70, he had to retire, unlike the American federal judiciary. And I must say, out of our admiration to him and out of the regular protocol, he was appointed as Deputy Chief Justice. Salim's mission as a judge was twofold: doing justice to the litigants and serving as a bridge between Arabs and Jews in Israel. In that mission, he succeeded. He was assisted by his deep understanding of Israel's society and the values of Israel's Jewish and democratic values. In his judgments, he would refer to Herzl, to Jewish law, of which he had a very deep understanding. And he had a deep understanding of democracy, understanding that democracy is not just the rule of the majority, but also a proper balance between we the people and I, the individual. A balanced approach to that. And I was so happy that in most of the cases in which we voted together, he was voting together with me. And we shared almost in all the cases, same values, same balance, same result. When he was sworn as a judge, and the ceremony just was held at the house of the Israeli president, I congratulated him. And I said, "Dear Salim, please remember, when you sit at trial, you yourself are on trial." This is what I told him. And when I look back, he passed brilliantly the court of history. I am sure that he will have a very important role to play in Israel's futures. A future that should be a bit on the quest between us and our neighbors, building peace between us and ourselves. Best regards, my good friend. Best regards, Nina. And here's Elika, who wants to say a word.
I'm happy to join all the congratulations. To both of you. Hello.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dear friends, it's a great honor for me to congratulate His Honor Justice Salim Jobran, former Deputy President of the Israeli Supreme Court, on his being awarded the prestigious Pursuit of Justice Award. Judge Jobran is the first non-Jew to receive this prize. Judge Jobran was a pioneer, in that he was the first Arab and the first Christian to be appointed as a member of the Israeli Supreme Court. Judge Jobran rose through every level of the legal profession, beginning as a lawyer in private practice, then being appointed as a judge in the magistrate court, subsequently appointed to a judge in the district court, until he was finally appointed a judge in the Supreme Court of Israel and deputy president of the Supreme Court. Not only is Judge Jobran a member of the Arab minority in Israel, he is also a member in a minority within minority, namely a Christian Arab. In his capacity as a judge, Judge Jobran saw himself as a representative of the Arab minority in Israel. For example, in his minority judgment opposing the limitation of percentage threshold for party lists in Knesset. However, Judge Jobran saw himself not only the representative of the Arab minority in Israel, but also as a representative of all minorities and all underprivileged or underrepresented groups in Israeli society, such as women, handicapped, the LGBT community, and others. Judge Jobran personally and his background made him one of the most important judges in the history of the Supreme Court in all matters relating to citizens' rights. It could not be more fitting that Judge Jobran joins the likes of Judge Aaron Barak, former president of the Israeli Supreme Court, and late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice of the United States Supreme Court, both recipients of the Pursuit of Justice Award. I've pointed out that Judge Jobran is the first Arab judge to be appointed to the Israeli Supreme Court. Judge Jobran has also made significant contribution to promoting Arab academics in the Israeli society. Judge Jobran heads Kav Mashre, the Amuta which promotes the employment of Arab university graduates within the Israeli business sector. Judge Jobran actively promotes Arab-Jewish cooperation. In his word, not only the Jews and Arabs should live together, but they should enjoy living together in the wonderful country of ours. I make special mention to Judge Jobran activities in the Beit Kedem Community Center in Akko, as well as in Beit HaGeffen Arab Jewish Cultural Center in Haifa. In conclusion, I want to mention Judge Jobran's long-standing friendship with the International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, the Aajlj. He has been an important participant in our conventions, and we have strong memories of his impressive lectures at our conventions in Lausanne and in Rome. I wish Judge Jobran many more years of health and fruitful activity. Thank you.
The 2021 Pursuit of Justice Award recipient, the Honorable Salim Jobran.
Hello from Israel. I am honored and excited to receive the Aajlj Pursuit of Justice Award. I would like to congratulate the other award recipients Professor Benjamin Ferenc and Advocate Patricia Glaser, and to express my gratitude to the Aajlj for granting me the distinguished award. I would also like to thank Steve Greenwald and Michael Trayson for nominating me for the award. It is remarkable that one of the main goals of the Aajlj is protecting human rights in the US and abroad. Most of my career I have been involved in human rights protection. When I was appointed to the Supreme Court in Israel, I was asked about my main role as a judge, and I answered that being part of a minority group in Israel, my main objective would be to protect the human rights of the population in Israel and rights of the minority groups, including the Arab population, the LGBT community, the disabled population, and many others. Equality between citizens is one of the main pillars of human rights. A discriminatory action or law by the government or the legislative authority is a violation of basic human rights. Unfortunately, the State of Israel as a democracy still does not have a constitution, nor a basic human rights law. Therefore, the Supreme Court of Israel played a major role in defending the term of equality and protecting different minority groups from discrimination. However, the evolving nationalist political forces in the government and the parliament are challenging the definition of human rights. Take the recent nation-state basic law that specifies the nature of the State of Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people, without securing equal rights to the non-Jewish individuals. I believe, along with many other Israeli scholars and activists, Jews and Arabs, that the new nation-state law challenges the Israeli democracy. I have already expressed my view and explained that, in my opinion, this law is a bad law. How can one justify strengthening and ensuring the Jewish characteristics of the state, while at the same time the principle of equality was not specifically enshrined in its constitution? How can one justify a law which reinforces the Jewish character of the state, while at the same time its Arab citizens suffer from discrimination in many of their life aspects? This is what Jabotinsky wrote in 1937. All of us, all Jews and Zionists of all schools of thought, want the best for the Arab of Eretz Israel. We want them to prosper both economically and culturally. We envision the regime of Jewish Palestine as follows. Most of the population will be Jewish, but equal rights for all Arab citizens will not only be guaranteed, they will also be fulfilled. In the light of this, the lack of any mention to the principle of equality in the national law or any other basic law is frustrating and deeply worrying. Also, David Ben-Gurion announced that the State of Israel will be a state of all its citizens. Therefore, Israel's proclamation of independence highlighted the equality rights for the Arab citizens of Israel. This is a quote from the proclamation. We appeal in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us now for months to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions. It is well known fact that the Arab minority in Israel is suffering a long-term and deep discrimination from the state institutions. And even though both Arab and Jewish communities are citizens of Israel, they live separately geographically in education and economy. There are serious gaps among the Jewish and Arab communities, which are reflected in education, housing, infrastructure, budgeting, socio-economic status, transportation, and other aspects. These gaps are feeding the divide between Jews and Arabs and point at the lack of common grounds. For many years, the Supreme Court have acknowledged the discrimination of the Arab minority in Israel and acted in different ways in order to minimize it, under the assumption that there must be neither differentiation nor discrimination between an Arab citizen and a Jewish one. Now, the Knesset, in its omission to include this aspect in the nation-state law, has given a stamp of approval to discrimination. I was privileged enough to have lived most of my life in mixed cities, where Arabs and Jews lived side by side. Acre and Haifa, where I grew up and where I came back to live recently, and Jerusalem. Relatively, most cities and communities are not mixed but rather homogeneous. There are specific communities for the different tribes, Jewish settlements, religious Arabs, Bedouins, etc. Homogeneous settlements serve as an obstacle to integrating among communities and individuals. It diminishes the window of opportunity, which is narrow to begin with, to a meeting point among parties. It blocks almost entirely the possibility for direct acquaintance and living together. Lacking knowing the other, one exposed to stereotyping and prejudice, which leads to less trust in the other part. Learning together in school, common social gatherings, celebrating holidays together, and etc. All these contribute to knowing and acknowledging each other, which is the basis upon which true equality can be built. Official policies and laws outlining housing carry a major role in this. The state may promote homogeneousness and segregation among the different communities, and it may promote heterogeneity by encouraging integration and common gatherings. For all these reasons and more, I believe that the nation-state law is wrong law. It pains me to put it so, say that out loud, but I do feel it is my duty as an Arab Israeli citizen who is a proud citizen and loves the country. This law is eroding the multicultural aspects of the state of Israel and swerves it toward the direction of a nationalistic state. It's worth knowing that the government had taken measures to reduce the gap between the two communities by investing government resources and funds as part of government decision 922 of 15 billion shekels. It is also important to highlight the fact that the number of Arab students in the Israeli universities is growing rapidly, and more graduating are employed in the Israeli economy. Thousands of physicians and engineers are taking a major role in growing the Israeli economy. A word of hope. As an optimistic person by nature, I always try to end on a positive note. I find it hard in this case, and yet there are many people, Jews and Arabs, who wish for a state which maintains equality where the majority will live side by side with the minorities in brotherhood and the feel of common destiny. Israel contains a largely diversity, cultured and various communities with different backgrounds, languages, who lives together. A diversified democratic state like Israel can acknowledge the various communities, respect, preserve, and cultivate the diverse cultural identities which live here. Reinforcing the various communities which are the building blocks of the Israeli society does not harm the goal of creating an Israeli common denominator among them, but rather the cultural, religious, linguistic, and social diversity that exists here is not a curse, but a blessing. It enables each and every one here to enrich himself with his neighbor's culture. I do hope that the liberal voice will be heard, that those who call for segregation, nation-state, and hate will weaken. I do hope that the Knesset will realize that the damage caused by the nation-state law supersedes its benefit, and that its passing has caused splintering the damage to society. I do believe that the Prime Minister, the government, and the Knesset do not see me and my fellow Arabs as second-class citizens. Otherwise, in this Orwellian reality in which we live, and in a country where all are equal, but Jews are more equal, this will bring the Israeli democracy into an end. Arabs cannot be Jews. They can be Israeli citizens while maintaining their culture, heritage, language, and who they are. Yet the Israeli state should embrace the Arabs to reach this goal. I hope that my grandchildren will grow up as citizens like any other Israeli citizen, sharing the same rights and responsibilities, with clear awarenesses of their difference in their religion and culture, different but equal. Again, thank you very much for this wonderful award.